Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the conference today. We have some exciting speakers, which I am in honor of announcing and introducing them. First, we have Aubrey, and she is the founder of Found Food, which is just great. And then we have Janice Nico Pendergrass, and she is with Bertha's Mission. She is also the founder, CEO, ED. I mean, all of us wear these big hats. And my name is Sherry Reitmer. I will be the moderator for this segment of the conference. And I happen to be the executive director of Laborers of the Harvest. And I will be joining in the speaking after our beautiful speakers are going to talk about rural food rescue, edible food rescue. So I just want to correct that. So Aubrey, would you like to start off and share with us how you got started and how rural edible food recovery came into your life? And do you do urban food too? Aubrey, did you hear me? Okay, Janice, did you hear that question? Okay, so why don't you go ahead and start off? I think we're having a little technical difficulty here with Aubrey.
Okay. Well, good morning. Thank you for allowing me to be a speaker today. And I want to first let you know a little bit about myself. Bertha's Mission, as we had spoken, the name Bertha comes from my mother, Bertha. She passed away in 2012, and she used to own a restaurant here called Chuck's Soul Food. And just following in the passion of serving people where they are, the vision was given to me by God to meet people that were underfed. And so we started the feeding ministry. In doing so, the Abraham Maslow, and Patrick, you can start the slide for me if you don't mind. Abraham Maslow believed that people have five level of needs. And so we thought that we need to meet people where they are. And by doing so, we started with hunger. People need to know that if you want to meet their needs, you have to start with feeding them first in order to get to the self-actualization of what people want to do or have to survive. So we knew that people needed food, water, and oxygen and shelter and so on. And so that kind of brought us to knowing that later on we'll talk more about the needs. But we knew that we had to try and find ways to fill the gap of the community. So we can move to the next slide, Patrick. So we partnered with different groups, and the slide is a little bit small, but I have my glasses on. But anyway, we partnered with some of the organizations within our community and asked them to help us to find out what it was that the community needed in order to meet that need. And so they came together and they said the people need food, but we knew that there was a poverty level within our community. And so we said, well, let's figure out, do we go to the churches? Do we talk to the individuals that we knew were homeless and hungry? And so in doing that, we started talking to the schools. And so we got together, and some of the children in the schools started doing food drives. And with them doing the food drives, we knew that, okay, we can do this, because we didn't have a whole lot of money in Lawrence County. And we can move to the next slide. Okay, and so then in finding out the information about Lawrence County, we found out that Lawrence County is 45,084 residents, according to the U.S. Bureau in Lawrence County, and that they have around 20% is over 65 years of age. and that around 21% is under the age of 18. And while we know that or believe that according to the Census Bureau, 89% of the people graduate from high school, but only 19% are college graduates. Well, the interesting thing about that is that the medium income is 64%. So we know that I went to Family and Children's Services to kind of get a little bit more information because then I started getting a little bit more curious that the poverty level for Lawrence County is 12.4%. And Patrick, we can go to the next slide. So we started doing some little bit of thinking and we said, well, okay, so if this is a problem, and we know that on a daily scale that people are not being fed or meeting, having their needs met as far as daily, what can we do different than what other agencies do? So we started implementing like annual dinners. And that's a picture. What you see now is one of our annual events. It's a Thanksgiving event that we had. And I'm trying to look at the stats there. So at that event, we had I think it was 300 and some people that we served at that event. But then we started looking into some additional information. And what it says there is that according to Feed America, that 14.4% in 2022, the average residents with 6,490 residents were facing hunger daily, and around 55% of individuals and families did not qualify for SNAP benefits, which means that their income was above the SNAP threshold, and that 45% of the residents were below the threshold. Now, what was interesting, though, is that what we do here is that we track every person that we feed or serve a meal to. And so as of this year, because the data that they have is always normally a year behind, but what we do is we track daily our meals that we serve. And so what we did is we wanted to know what the current data was for this area here in Lawrence County. And as of September the 30th, 2024, we actually served 10,169 meals. And another part of our service is that we deliver meals as well. So we delivered 6,375 meals and gave out 879 food boxes. And Patrick, we can move to the next slide. And the other thing that we do is the drive-up window. We have a lot of the residents how we meet people where they are is that we do the drive-up window. And most of the people that come to the drive-up window, they either walk up, ride up, or, come up by in their cars. And so we know that these people are people who don't have homes pretty much because they're living in their cars. And so we also provide the non-perishable foods, easy to fix food. So, and the reason why we do that is because we know that these people are either living in their cars, living in the woods. And so we want to make sure that they're able to get the food that is easy to fix. Some of them living in hotels, and most of the time all they have is microwaves. And so it was very heartwarming to know that when people are asking for food, we want to make sure that it's easy for them to get it. It's difficult for someone to say, I'm hungry, but yet at the same time, they can't prepare the food because you don't have a can opener. So we make sure that they get their food, and they can pop the top, warm. So even if they're in the woods, they have a way of warming their food up. Or if they're at a hotel, they have a way of warming their food up. The other service that we provide is the delivery meals to the elderly disadvantaged. And we've received so many calls of thank you to the elderly disadvantaged because a lot of times they can't prepare their own meals, or their caregiver can't, they're there maybe 2 times a week or something like that. But we can take the meals, and they're hot prepared meals, nutritious meals. The goal is to make sure that they're getting like I want to call it a 3-course meal. They're getting their proteins, they're getting their vegetables and all of that. And we can move to the next slide. I'm walking along with you, Patrick, in case you didn't know that. Some of the challenges, though, that we meet is that when we go, and I'm looking at this, when we go to deliver these meals or prepare the meals, the challenge that we meet is that we don't know, because we're feeding ministry, although we track how many people we serve on a day. That's at the end of the day that we do the tracking for how many meals we prepared. We don't know how much to prepare. So that's a challenge for us. But what we do know is that how many meals we serve in a month. So we know that the numbers, that the need for food is there, that hunger is an issue here in the community. The other challenge that we run across is that when we go to, for instance, deliver the meals to the elderly, sometimes they're not home. But what we do to improvise or to meet that challenge is the next door neighbor is normally there and they want the meal. So we give the meal to the next door neighbor. And then we end up with a new client. So that works out in our favor. Or then someone else will tell us, oh, I didn't know that your service was there. And then you get to meet other people who are in need. Also, another thing that happens for us is that if in the case where we do prepare, like for instance, additional food, we have extra food, because we are Serve Safe certified and we have Serve Safe certifications, we learn about what foods are reused. We can freeze food and you can reuse it. But you have to know your temperatures and what's freezable and reusable and all that. So that's a good thing to get that training. We can move to the next slide. And I'm trying not to take up too much time so that way I make sure that Audrey has time for hers. So basically what I'm talking about is what I learned in school. It's a technique called the subtraction technique. So although you might have certain things in place for the organization, there comes a time when you have to improvise and make changes to your organization or your regular routine process in how you run your organization. And so you have to know what a strategic breakdown, and if you want to learn more about this, you can look up an author called Drew Boyd. And his book is called Inside the Box. He teaches you about all these different techniques on how you can improvise something like innovation. But anyway, in his practice, he teaches us how to improvise. And so what we had to do, especially during a time when we were faced with COVID, prior to COVID, we used to have a dine-in, and that's what you see behind me where I got this wall kind of closed off. We had the dine-in process where people used to come in here and eat. Well, we had to change that. And that's when we went to what I mentioned earlier about our walk-up or dine-in drive-through service. We went to drive-in service instead and started doing the food boxes and all of that. So you change your products and your service using a subtraction technique, and then eliminate what your one of your internal components of your regular service that you provide. And we can move to the next slide. Okay. Okay. So what I have there on this slide is these are the steps that you use for your subtraction process. You list the components, then you select an essential component and imagine removing it, which is what we did. So take, for instance, normally when you think about hamburger meat, I'm just going to use hamburger meat. We decided that we're going to make spaghetti, but we've overcooked too much ground beef. And you know, the price of ground beef now is like, for a 10-pound pack of ground beef, whereas on a Wednesday when we're doing preparing for 300 and something meals, so we have to buy, I think, about 10 packs of ground beef. What we do is we will freeze some so that way we can prepare chili. So our essential idea is that we're going to use the ground beef for spaghetti, but then we'll use some of it for later and we'll make chili. Actually, chili dogs or chili, you know, so you figure out what else you can do with it. Also, another thing we do, part of our program too, is that we want to make sure that people know what they can do outside of Bertha's mission. So a lot of times people ask us, well, what else can we do? So we'll tell them, hey, did you know that you can take these lentil beans and you can take the chickpeas? Now, this is a good story. Do you know that we used to put chickpeas every time we got like tons of chickpeas and lentil beans, and I was not a fan of either. We were putting them in the blessing box, giving them away to people. Well, just this week, we took lentil beans, chickpeas, ground beef, rotel in a can, and we made a cowboy casserole. It was a hit. And I was like, oh, they might not be getting no more chickpeas and lentil beans, you know. So we want to make sure that people know what they can do to create healthy meals.
Right, right.
Next screen, please.
Janice, I also want to leave some time so that if people have some questions for you,
Yes.
that would be great.
Yes.
So that's awesome. You're doing fabulous.
I think we're at the last screen.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So as I mentioned, get creative with your ideas, create healthy meals, but be cost conscious, because we are an organization that depend on donor relationships and also other agencies supporting us. Make sure that when you do get donations in, because people want to donate food to you, inspect the food, inspect the cans because of expiration dates. Don't be afraid to freeze food, but also put your dates on the food when you freeze it. Don't serve anything that you will not eat. That's our motto. Learn about safe serve protocols.
That's wonderful, Janice. Oh my goodness, thank you. Does anybody have any questions at this moment for Janice? I have one or two. So Janice, where do you end up getting your food? Because I mean, you're doing a fantastic job and cooking, making all those meals. That is a lot of work. I know this for a fact. So where does the food come from?
Well, it depends on what type of food we're talking. Are we talking meats? Or are we talking canned goods? Or,
you know what? I think the audience would just love to know, you know, all of the above.
Okay. Most of the meats we buy, or if we have some, because it's such a rural area, we have farmers that go and get the meat processed. And so every now and then we will get like a cow donated, or, you know, pig donated. We don't do deer because I don't know how to cook deer meat. Um,
Not
or
yet.
yes. And then the schools, churches, donate canned goods, box goods. They have fun food drives for us.
That's wonderful.
And yeah.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on to Miss Aubrey here. And I'm excited. And thank you so much, Janice. We'll circle back up here in a little bit.
Thank you.
Yes, well, thank you. I don't have any slides. I'm actually here sharing about, so I'm with Found Food Co. and I'm based in Des Moines, Iowa, central Iowa. And my background is prior to 2023, I accidentally founded a nonprofit that was managing food recovery and trying to do food recovery work in central Iowa and Des Moines. And a big part of our challenge with moving food was, like a lot of the groups and people here, is we know there's more than enough food out there for everybody. We can see it. It's all, there's all these grocery stores and restaurants and places that have food around our communities. And because it's easy to throw it away and there hasn't been any real policies that require anyone to do donations, it's been challenging to just get that food moving. So outside of just trying to get the businesses to say yes to letting the food move, the next challenge and barrier, a lot of the groups that we've been working with that are in rural and rural areas, is infrastructure. So, we might not have, I'm from a small town in Southwest Iowa. And when I talk to my parents about, all of the food that they have available in my small town in Iowa, there's 2 grocery stores. And I always, we had 2 of the same gas station. And that was how we were like, obviously we're enormous. We have 2 Casey's gas stations. So we know that there's food there. It's just when we would talk about where that food could go, the response was, well, our food pantry is only open 1 day a week. Yes, that's true. Where else are people and where else could food go? And so this is where ultimately putting refrigerators in places where people are and getting food to those locations and letting them pass it along to the clients that they're serving. So the Food Grid is a group based in Dallas. It's in Dallas County, Iowa. The grid stands for Grow, Rescue, Identify, and Direct. And the Food Grid is completely volunteer. There's no paid staff. They are all volunteers. 3 of the board members, or 2, I believe, of the board members are lawyers. They're not coming from food system backgrounds, but they're coming from being community leaders and ones in the community who know who the right connections are. And that's ultimately what we found has been really critical when we're working in any community. Is my job and our role at the Food Grid is to try and help those who are boots on the ground. So for example, in Granger, Iowa, which is a small town, and I think it's probably less than 5,000 people in the community. And they don't have a grocery store in town. They have a convenience store. They also have an incredible library. And that's actually where the fridge or community refrigerator is located. And all it took was talking with the librarian. Libraries have been some of the best spots for us to put food and just let people have it. Libraries are already a spot where they're trying to, they provide a lot of services and they have all of these great resources and networks and connections. So when we've had librarians who've reached out and said, well, we're seeing a lot more, one in another rural community said, we're seeing a lot more high schoolers and teenagers that are coming to the library after school, which is what we want. They're also hungry. What can we do? And that's really where a refrigerator came in. And, my main job is to help people work through the worries, work through the concerns. The first concern is always, is this legal? Is this safe? And so we have conversations about the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act. And also the reason why we're using a refrigerator is because of the food safety. These are just, I think we've all seen some of the little like the free libraries that are in yards all over the place. This is the same concept for the free little food pantries that are around. We just added temperature control so that it's can hold more for longer. The other integral piece that I think has helped a lot of these groups who are just concerned initially, because I recognize just putting food in a location and letting people have it makes a lot of people very nervous. They get very worried about it. And I think it's where we're able to see maybe some of the biases about power and control and who deserves food and who's needy enough. And those are a lot of the questions that we get about, well, what if someone takes all the food? That's the point. That's what we wanted. All of the food in this fridge was going to go in the garbage. And the fridge is not meant to be a food pantry. There's no guarantees that anything will be in there. Really, the fridge is just a way to help communities share with each other and get back to more of that we take care of each other. And so, really that's what we're trying to instill with these refrigerators and community refrigerators is, yes, we are working to try and help make connections for them to get food. But the other big piece of it is their own network and connection. So for example, this library in Granger, once the Harriet is the name of the librarian there who runs it. And again, once she knew, wait, this is safe, this is free, this is legal. Oh, okay. So she said yes to the fridge. And then she was wondering, well, where does the food come from? How do we get food in here? And part of it was she talked with some other librarians, because that's how we got a large group of librarians, is one librarian did it and showed, hey, this is actually great. Here's what we've learned. And then they shared it with their network of librarians. And so now we're here to say, how can we support you? So the food grid and the work that we're doing is buying the infrastructure. We're trying to help raise the money to get the fridge to, we also include fridge grids. And I wish I don't have them here because I'm not the one that makes them. The one that makes them is he's now a college freshman, but when he started helping, he was a high school junior who makes these 3D printed little, we call them a fridge grid. It goes in a community refrigerator and it allows us to track temperature as well as number of times the door's been opened and closed. So the temperature control allows us to set up any sort of alert if potentially the door gets left open or the power if it gets too hot or too cold, we can set up so that someone will get an alert saying, hey, you need to go check on the fridge. But I think the most important piece for us is the door utilization, because then you can see, maintaining anonymity and giving people the privacy is a big part of the fridge. When people are coming, you don't know if they're dropping off or picking up. I go and might drop something off, but if there's something in the fridge that looks delicious, I'm going to take it. This is why this is for everybody. This isn't just for others. And so that's where putting these in some of these locations and treating them like this is for the community owns the fridge. And so that's really where Harriet, once she knew, oh, this is legal, she went to her grocery store, who I had been trying to get to donate food for 8 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. You think they would say yes to me? No. You know who they say yes to? Harriet. Because Harriet comes every day. They know Harriet. Harriet will be here. And if they have to tell Harriet, sorry, we can't, she's going to be like, well, that's weird. Because I heard that you could, and here's all these things. And that's really what my job is to help Harriet come back and say, you're not wrong. Nope, you're not wrong. It is legal. Here's the resources. Here's the things. What are their questions? What do they need? And that's how we can help from the back end. Let them be the ones, let our partners, they're the ones that need the relationships. They're the ones that are going to be working together. And because I know it's been brought up before, transportation is obviously one of the next biggest issues for even moving this food. And because of, I guess, where we are and what we've been able to do, it really is the community coming together. So it's not a consistent, the library, because they have seen the value, they are okay sending some of their staff or volunteers to go pick up the food. The school that we've seen, they don't have that kind of capacity. So we've asked, for example, at the catering company or we're trying to get the local hospital because they have a lot of food that they can donate. That's something their staff can drop off. So it definitely, that transportation and logistics piece can be tricky. But again, that's why we're putting it easy access where people are when they're open, so that people going there already can just drop off. So we've seen the first fridge we got going, again, I talk a lot about community refrigerators, and really the key of them is just serving people where they are. And the base to that is to have the infrastructure. So whether it's a fridge, it might be a fridge and a freezer and shelving, that's really what we're trying to get for these groups, and then let them get going. And for example, so I've at this point helped launch around 300 community refrigerators. And out of that, I only know of 3 that aren't there anymore. One, because the grocery store closed and the person didn't want it anymore. One, because the police department took it over and no one wanted to fight for it. It was at City Hall. And another one where they just weren't, they weren't having a lot of people come and they just didn't need it anymore. That's great. That's fine. The other part that we love about community fridges, if you talk to Harriet, is they've had to move it multiple times. That's a success. This isn't something where we're like, here, you're going to put it. We know exactly how it's going to go. No, we know we're going to put it there. Here's how we think it's going to go. But we're going to work with you to find out, what are your challenges? What are your barriers? And that's why it's helpful. It's a refrigerator. It's not easy to move, but we're not moving a building. So it was helpful at the library. They originally had it in their front area. And then they realized there were a lot of people who didn't always, the anonymity part was important. So now they have moved it to another area of the library where there's a separate exit. They have all sorts of community members who, because they see this as a resource, now they're doing things to support the fridge. And that's always what we've always wanted. It's not to make any group dependent on me or on us or some other organization to do the work for them. It's really to help them realize, you've got 80% of what you need right here. What can we do to help get you over that edge? Because you have the people, the people know and trust you. Why shouldn't you also have the food resources? And so that's really where the work here is. And it's not something that's seen in I will say sometimes there are pantries who don't like a community fridge. I have questions about this. If we're all on the same page and we're trying to feed people, then you do you. And these are just another option. This is another way to bring access. And so whether we call it a community fridge because it's in a library, or we might call them activities fridges, those are ones we put in schools. Obviously, the community looks different because we're not inviting people from off the street to come and use the fridge at the school. That fridge at the school is for the students and the staff and any other students that are coming there and they're after practice. That's again where they look kind of different. We have some in apartment complexes. We have one in another rural community in Iowa where they were really struggling. They don't even have a grocery store. And it was 2 apartment complexes that held a lot of seniors. Again, if getting the food there into a fridge is at least better than it not getting there at all. So that's really the part that we're trying to work on, is asking people, in a community, where are people already going? And what would it take for us to get food there and let them have it? And that's the work that we're getting to do. And it's my favorite. So if there's other groups that are interested, I do have a community fridge toolkit you can download for free. Harvard Food and Law Policy Center has a lot of great resources on community fridges and the legality there. But ultimately, my job is to be the hype person for the group there that's trying to figure it out. Because a lot of times we have found, me too, where I went and asked the people who I thought were the leaders in the emergency food space, how could we do this? And their response was always, you can't. It's not safe. It's not legal. Well, okay. And eventually I thought, I don't think that's true. So now that's where, I want there to be a resource for these groups like Janet, the innovative ones that are like, it feels like there's something we can do. you can, and let's do it. And that's the part that I want to be here to help those groups, is if they're like, we know we can do this, I'll help you. I might be based in Iowa, but one of my friends in North Carolina, actually, she's a chef. She started 4 fridges, the Feedwell fridges in North Carolina. And they are, it's just great to see how each community takes this idea and then makes it their own and does incredible work with it. So if there's groups or anyone that's out there that's like, oh, we'd like to do this, but we're a little nervous, I got you. I'm happy to help. So thanks for letting me talk at you.
We have some questions here for you. Question for Aubrey. Have you received any government funds or grants to help you pay for your community fridges?
Yes, actually. So in Iowa, our local Department of Natural Resources, the DNR, has they call it a solid waste alternatives program. And they actually had a food storage capacity grant that they launched sometime during the pandemic. So initially that was, I think it's like an $8,000 maximum. So initially the nonprofit I was running, we wrote the grant, and then it was like about $1,000 per fridge to get started. So that's where some of that got started. There's also, I don't believe they have, Microsoft has their ChangeX grant that's for community refrigerators. The last time I sent someone there, they said it was, they hadn't refilled it again, but my hope is that it comes back, because a lot of groups, it's a $5,000 grant that to just help launch a community refrigerator. So my real goal is to try to get like Whirlpool or one of these places to just let people have the fridges. Because again, we know that there are some that are getting that could use a home. So, but there is funding. It was actually in a large grant. I had gotten a grant for $45,000 to buy equipment for other groups. So that's where a good chunk of those first community refrigerators and freezers and equipment came from. Because again, we don't have money. We're not like sitting on money. So that's a big part of it, is trying to find the money to buy the fridge. And then the next part is finding the food and the relationships and the resources for me to just help direct them I'll help if I can, but I'm also very honest. There are certain places where I'm not helpful. It's not helpful for me to go into our local Hy-Vee grocery store. They don't appreciate me very much, but they appreciate the neighbors that they know. So that's, again, it's so much better for me, because now I get to just be owly all over here and send in the people who are going to be able to move the stuff forward. So it's worked out great.
There are 2 more questions. Kristen has another one, and so does Kim. Kristen is asking how you were able to navigate the health department with the community fridges.
Our health department has one. So that's been Appanoose County Public Health has one, because again, the goal of the fridge is to provide the temperature support. We actually have medical clinics that have fridges as well. So our health department, the guidelines for the fridge are that everything needs to be safely packaged. It needs to be dated and labeled, and have any allergens listed. That's it. Those are the 3 guidelines for every fridge. And so if something gets put in the fridge that doesn't meet those guidelines, throw it in the garbage. That's it. Like, we're not making anyone. We're just trying to provide the space and enough guidance for this to happen. That said, yeah, someone could put something in the fridge that doesn't belong, and then we just throw it in the garbage. So the health departments have been actually one of my favorite ones, because a lot of businesses are like, oh, we can't, the health department. I'm like, it's at the health department. So
their enforcement is huge. Having their
so, and it's different in Iowa too, because who you have to go through for inspections and appeals is different in every county. So that said, not every health department is going to be on board with it. There are plenty of places that are like, I don't think so. Okay, move along. But we're not going to not do it because one place doesn't want it.
Thank you so much. Kim has a question for you as well. She wants to know how she can get a copy of the guide that you spoke of.
Absolutely. I will. It's foundfoodco.com is my website. I will say I don't know that I was making sure it's out there. I'm also happy. I will send it along to the crew here and I'll put it in, I think, online somewhere. But again, it's just some of the real simple kind of here's the resources and questions. So I'm happy to share it.
Excellent. Aubrey, thank you so much. So unless there's any other questions, I did want to ask you how long you've been doing this. So that was a quick question that I had.
Yes, I started in 2013. And like I said, it was the nonprofit's still there called Eat Greater Des Moines. I ran that for about 10 years and then found that I don't like managing a board. I don't like running a nonprofit. I'm not good at it. So I would rather work with the groups that are doing the work and help them figure it out. So that's now why I've gotten to have experience on both sides of having to operate in a nonprofit space with a lot of challenges there. And then also being able to work with the boots on the ground to be like, they don't even care about what you're doing. Let's just go ahead and do it. So it's kind of nice.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. So I guess I'll go ahead and move on to my portion. And I've been the executive director for Labors of the Harvest for the last 5 years. Labors of the Harvest originally started in a very small rural town 39 years ago, actually. And they would just glean from the local grocery store and then distribute the food out twice a week. Well, when I came on board, and we're serving about 500 people. When I came on board, COVID eventually happened. And then the next thing I know, we're gleaning 25 different grocery stores all throughout Kern County, which is a huge county in California. And so my organization will go to the ends of the earth to go get food. And how we do it, it's a huge operation. And then we have to have the refrigeration for all the stores, et cetera. So it does become a bigger operation and a lot more labor intensive and of course expensive. So going out to get all the grocery stores, to rescue all that food, we have 3 days to get it out usually for the health department. And so then we also have a very unique way of distributing all the food. And that is that we have what we call our open harvest markets. So when we recover the food, what we do is for $10 for a shared maintenance fee, you get 3 empty bags and you can go shopping in any of our stores for anything that you want that works for you. So, and there's no questions asked either. It's interesting how people have this concept that free food is free and it just shows up on the shelves or on your table. But they don't consider that just our gas bill alone, our gasoline bill is $940 a week. And then we're rescuing over 80,000 pounds of food. Well, when you look at a grocery store, that takes a lot of money to operate a grocery store. We're doing this on 5 full-time employees, gleaners, drivers, and then we have volunteers. However, it does become so worth it because we're feeding between 4,000 and 11,000 people a month. And this is able to go out to all these different organizations that are in the rural areas. What I have found about the rural areas as far as the gleaning, because we do inner city gleaning, urban as well. But what I love about the rural areas, they're smaller communities and they know each other. So they know the grocery store people. You go in there and you go, hi, Joe, hi, Susie. So that is the fun part. And then the grocery stores really like seeing that the food stays local within their own community. They become a little territorial. So as far as funding, as far as support, when you get to know the managers and stuff, then they are willing to actually start receiving donations for your particular organization because they know that you're going to make them look good and you're feeding their local people. And the community becomes very, very loyal. I'm sure, Janice, you've noticed that, haven't you? Yeah. People will, once you have that reputation and that presence, people just love you and they can't wait for you to come and open up your store and give you a hug. And they'll even bring you meals, the food that they've received too. So I have a heart for the rural areas a little bit more than the inner cities. The inner cities usually have a lot more food programs available, whereas the rural areas, we're the only program. And so that becomes a really big gift. What I do love about our open harvest market is it doesn't matter if you have medical or religious, or if you're eating a certain way, whatever works for your family, whether you're homeless, whether you're not, you could be a multimillionaire. I don't care. We have food and we want it on the tables. I figured out that just in our Kern County, there's about 750,000 pounds of food that is being thrown away in landfills. Now, that could be going to people. The problem is, as the panel and people that are on this in the audience here, it's the infrastructure. It's how do we keep it going? How do we logistically, get the boots on the ground and get the food? It's just access. So to grab support, to find support, whether it's through grants, whether it's through, the stores, connecting with our service organizations, joining the Chamber of Commerce, letting people know, because people, if they don't know about you and what you're doing, then they can't give, they can't help. And I have found that there's so many people that really want to help. They don't have the time. We're doing it. And so they really want to support you. There's so many things. You were talking about tracking. I would have to say that for our rural areas, in the area that we serve, we have a lot of farm workers, and a lot of those farm workers don't qualify for the free food because they don't have the documentation. And we're no questions asked. If you're in front of me, you're going to get loved up through food, no matter what. It does not matter. And so the food is there. It would have ended up in the landfills anyway. What do I care about where you live, how you live? I just want you to enjoy the food. If I'm going to do the work, come, let's have a party. So let's see. There's a few other things that I was going to mention, but maybe not. The one thing that I did want to say is establishing, and I think Aubrey and Janice have both mentioned it, your networking, really getting to know people and having relationships with them. I mean, let's face it, humanity's been breaking bread since the beginning of time to get to know their brother and sister. That's really all this is getting to know the store managers, getting to know the receivers, getting to know your people that you're serving. And there's so many different ways to be able to do this. You can see Janice has a beautiful program. Aubrey has a different program. I have a different program. And they all work because they're all with the same heart. They're all for, seeing this beautiful food and making sure it gets to people. And so, I definitely have a heart for the rural area. And of course, I'll do the inner city too. But I find that our rural areas are just so welcoming and warm and appreciative. Like I said, they will bring the food back to you and share it. It's really cute. So let's see. Oh, there's some questions back for Ashley, and also, Ashley. So let's see, can those resources at the Harvest Food Law and Policy Clinic, can we find them online? So I'm not sure, was that for?
Yes, I was trying to, I don't know how to share resources on this line, so I just shared them on a different computer and shared a link to both of those resources.
Okay. So Kristen is asking me to talk about SB 1383. In California, I'm a consultant for SB 1383 for California. And so I love training. I'm very passionate about this. SB 1383 is a law that was established actually 4 years ago, had 2 years for California large food generators, the large grocery stores. They had 2 years to get in line. And as of January 2024, the grocery stores, these large food generators, it is now illegal for them to throw the food away that has hit its sell by date or best used by date. Now, Aubrey tapped on this, that people are very confused. They see those dates on the packages and they think that it's expired food. It's not. What those dates represent is that the stores cannot monetize on the food anymore. That food is still so good. You can actually freeze milk up to 2 weeks. You can freeze cheese. What we do is we pick up as much food as possible, and we want to stop the bacteria date. We want to stop it. And so we freeze as much as possible. And then we cold storage. Most of our food, we get it out within 3 days and it's on a table. So SB 1383, like I said, it is now illegal for grocery stores in the state of California to not throw this food away, that they have to donate it to a nonprofit organization. The hiccup here is our jurisdictions are still not slamming down the hammer. The law states that a grocery store, if they are in violation, could receive a fine up to $10,000 per day per store if they do not follow through with it. But the jurisdictions are giving the stores a little bit longer to try and get with the program. So we have 104 different grocery stores to glean from. But as you've heard, we glean about 25 grocery stores, and that's 80,000 pounds of food right there that we're gleaning per month. So we still have a ways to go, but what I love about it is that, you know, we are able to feed people. It prevents the food from going into the landfills, and the SB 1383 was to stop the methane gas emissions. So believe it or not, 61% of methane gas actually comes from food being thrown away. 61%. It's not cow farts and it's not our gasoline. 61% is food, and that food can be diverted. All we need to do is have more support for organizations like what you see here in the entire conference. So if anybody has any more questions about SB 1383 or about our programs or anything that I can help with, please contact me anytime. My number's on every bathroom wall all over Google. So I'm not shy, and I will pick up the phone and answer any questions if anyone has anything. Thank you so much. And we have about 7 more minutes if anybody has anything else that they'd like to talk about.
Well, I think Patrick was telling us we're supposed to wrap up.
Okay. Well, then all
Sorry,
right.
my dog.
Well, everyone, thank you so much, Janice, Aubrey. You were wonderful. I appreciate you. Love you guys. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thanks all.